Then we continue with 2.2 part 2 administration. This part stipulates the provision pertaining to the method of administration of the fire services department. The provision include the fire services department and its officer, appointment of auxiliary fire officer, duties of fire service department, uniform and identification card, exercise of powers and performance of duties. And the duties of the fire service department are as follow. Yang ni adalah tanggungjawab jabatan yang berkaitan dengan fire services. Take lawful measures for extinguishing, fighting, preventing and controlling fire. And protecting life, menyelamatkan nyawa dan juga harta benda di dalam situasi ketika berlakunya kebakaran. And determine and menentukan the means of exit in the event of fire dan menentukan tempat yang untuk keluar ketika sekiranya berlaku satu kebakaran dan memastikan the provision, maintenance and proper regulation of fire escapes for every premises and investigate into the cause, origin and circumstances of fires, perform humanitarian services including the protection of fire and property in any calamity. And abatement of fire hazard. This part stipulate the provision pertaining to the method of abating fire hazard and the power of the Director General of the Fire Services Department. Among the provision of fire hazard abatement notice, the power of Director General to abate fire hazard in vacant or unoccupied premises, offence of failing to comply with fire hazard abatement notice, closing order, the power of fire services officer in the event of fire, and finally is appeals. And for danger, explosion and fire hazard, no smoking or open flames. And for water and fire hydrants, this part stipulates the provision pertaining to the water and fire hydrants as follow. Adequate storage of water at the premises for fire fighting purposes, power to fix fire hydrant location plates, concealment and misuse of fire hydrants, notice of work affecting fire hydrants, duty of water authorities to notify the state director of any action affecting the flow of water to a fire hydrant. And 2.5, referring to fire certificate, this part stipulates the provision pertaining to the fire certificate as follow. The power of Director General to determine and designate particular user size or location of premises for the purpose of issuance of a fire certificate under the Act, requirement of fire certificate and fees for the issue of fire certificate, the change of condition affecting adequacy of life safety facilities, offence in relation to fire certificate, rights of appeal, court's power and the power of Director General to prohibit or restrict use of certain premises, and finally to order the cease activity in cases of urgency. And for the enforcement, exercise of power includes the power of entry, power to arrest without warrant, power of investigation, power to require attendance of witness, examination of witness and conduct of prosecution. Yang ni adalah berkaitan dengan penguatkuasaan. Penguatkuasaan yang ni adalah kuasa untuk memasuki. Ini adalah kuasa untuk menahan seseorang yang terlibat dalam kebakaran tanpa sebarang waran. Yang ini adalah kuasa yang berkaitan untuk membuat penyiasatan terhadap kebakaran yang berlaku. Yang ini kuasa yang berkaitan dengan saksi di tempat kejadian. And then yang ni adalah examination ataupun kita membuat evaluation terhadap saksi dan juga conduct a prosecution. And for inquiries into fires, this part stipulates the provision pertaining to inquiries as follow. The minister may appoint any person or person to hold an inquiry. B is taking possession of premises and other property damaged or destroyed by fire until the completion of the inquiry. And for the welfare fund, this part stipulates the provision pertaining to the welfare fund as follow. Sources of the welfare fund, among them are all fines inflicted upon fire officer is any disciplinary proceeding. Donation or rewards offered to the fund or to individual member of the fire services department respectively and accepted by the Director General. All sums of monies and other property offered to fire officer and forfeit by an order of court. Welfare Fund Committee, monies for fund to be raised only with consent, administration and application of fund. And in the miscellaneous part, it covers the special duty and expenses thereof, offences such as interfering with fire officer in execution of his duty, failure to comply with direction, falsification of documents, false statement, etc. and giving or false report of fire. General penalty is equal to 5,000 ringgit Malaysia or 3 years imprisonment or both. Compounding of offences, power to apply act to vessel and movable structures, power to make regulation by the minister, and finally the repeal part include the fire service enactment of the state or Sabah, part acts of the local government act. And under the regulation for Fire Service Act 1988, are the Fire Services Fee of Pusat Latihan Bomba Regulation 1996, Fire Services Department Welfare Fund Regulation 1997, Fire Services Compounding of Offences Regulation 2000, Fire Services Fire Certificate Regulation 2001. And for Uniform Building Bylaws 1984, among the main provisions stipulated are submission of plan for approval, space light and ventilation, temporary works in connection with building operations, structural requirements, constructional requirements, fire alarms, fire detection, fire extinguishment and firefighting access. And for the conclusion, the Fire Service Act 1988 was enacted to enable the Fire Service Department to function effectively and efficiently in the aim to protect human lives and property from the risk of fire. The provisions stipulated under the Act give emphasis on the administration and abatement of fire hazard. Sebenarnya Fire Service Act ni dibuat untuk membolehkan jabatan yang berkaitan dengan fire service ni berfungsi secara efektif dan very efficient untuk memastikan dapat menyelamatkan nyawa ataupun harta benda daripada risiko kebakaran. Dan the Uniform Buildings Bylaws 1984 stipulates the detailed provision for drainage, road and building construction. Among the provisions stipulated are those for construction requirements, firefighting requirements, fire alarm, fire detector, fire extinguisher and access to fight fire. This is the reference for this subtopic. Thank you for attention.